Welcome back for another Sins of the Solar Empire 2 video. We are featuring the Vasari capital ships today. The first ship being the Jarrasul Evacuator. Now, I did a video on this very specific ship a couple months ago. A lot has changed since then, so we are going to spend some time going through some stats, going through the things that have changed, going through what may change in your builds. So anyone who's familiar with Vasari knows that the ship is required as one of the ships that you start the game with, and you really don't have a choice with it because it warps you in, it collects your home planet. What you might not know is its combat stats and what is and is not good for this ship to build, so we'll go through that now. So at starting the game, level 1, no upgrades. As you can see, we've got nothing in warfare. The AI got my empire while I was moving some ships around. But this is as raw as it gets. So 500 durability, which is the same for every capital ship. Starts with 2780 shield points, 1560 armor points, 5430 hull points, 250 antimatter. Comes with 2 heavy fighters, which is just the 1 squadron. Has a medium wave cannon with a 10 DPS at 200 Pierce. 4 beams with 6.7 DPS each at 500 Pierce. And 2-point defense pulse guns with 4.5 damage and 0 Pierce. Bombardment is 1 bombardment beam of 5 DPS with 0 Pierce, which is just what gets you damage on planets. Really not too much more to share on that one at this point. So what has changed since the last since the update a couple months ago? It is more durable. There's more shield, more armor, more hull points, and they level up quicker. And then specifically on the medium wave cannon, it has jumped to 200 Pierce. I believe before it was something like 120, and 200 now being something that might actually be worth doing something with the wave cannon when it comes to purchasing weapons and whatnot. The beams are about the same still. Pulse guns, I believe, are about the same. So really what you got is a tankier ship, more armor, more hull, and then the wave cannon got a small buff to it. So what we have here next to it, this is a level 1 evacuator with all upgrades finished. So if I go to the tech tree here, you'll see I have everything damage-wise, everything unlocked, all of the hull, all of the regen, all of the armor strength, everything is done here. So by comparison, we're looking at 3450 in shield points versus 2780. These are both still level 1, so we're comparing apples to apples, just upgrades only. So you get about, would this be about 800-ish, almost 700 extra shield. You get about 500 or just under 500 in armor points, and then you get 2,300 or so in hull points. Antimatter, that's one I should actually upgrade because that is available. You have 340 versus 250, and the antimatter regen is 1.2 per second. And then a level 10, this is a level 10 with all the upgrades as well. So it looks like it gains 3,500 in shield. Looks like 1,400 in armor points. Armor strength jumps up to 150 from 96. Starts with 60, bumps up to 96 with upgrades, up to 150 with full levels, full upgrades. And then hull points goes from 7715 all the way up to a ridiculous 13,890. And then antimatter of 768 as a max. Looking at weapons, it goes from 10 to 14 on the medium wave cannon, and then all the way up to 33.5 once you hit level 10. Beams goes from 6.7 to 9.9, and then 22.4 on level 10. And pulse goes from 4.5 to 6.4, and then 14.5 on the point defense. And then bombardment beam actually does get levels now, or I think maybe it did before, but it has planet bombing damage upgrades here. So instead of 5, you go to 7.4, and then with levels, it's 16.8. So quite a beefy ship once you get to level 10. As you guys, I'm sure, are aware, level 10 is not exactly an easy thing to get most capital ships to, especially in player versus player, because most people will see anything approaching level 5 or level 6. And unless you have a perfect counter fleet to what the enemy is building, and you can keep this out of harm's way, then for the most part, things don't reach level 10 very regularly. The other thing that it gets is it bumps up from 1 fighter squadron up to 5 over the course of the levels. If I recall correctly, it's a new squad at 3, 5, 7, and 9. And you can obviously, now you have the heavy fighters as a choice or the squadron of bombers as a choice. So you can either have the 10 fighters or I believe it's 15 bombers. So looking at skills, what has changed? So colonize gets you a free mining level. And I'm sure as many of you are aware, you level it up. It lowers your cooldown from 120 to 90 to 60, lowers your antimatter cost from 120 to 90 to 60, and then gives you a new mining level from 1 to 2 to 3. So while I do think that this is a good one to get, it is no longer the must-have that the ship used to have back in the previous patch. Mining levels at this point more or less really only save you some resources, because almost every planet has the mining that you can get the level 1 or the level 2. If we look at, I believe it's the volcanic, it doesn't even, you automatically get unlocks all the way through. Ice planets, again, you can afford every single unlock all the way through. And there's nothing that really gets unlocked with the planets. Whereas if you're playing a Advent, Advent actually has to upgrade their planets to get to the higher tiers. Vasari no longer has to do tiers. They just get population, and otherwise they automatically have unlocked mining on every single planet that they're playing on. So while the colonize is a good ability, and it's auto leveled on your first one, it's not the must-have that it used to be. It will save you some resources when it comes to upgrading your mining, though. The gravity warhead is unchanged from the previous version. So level 1, 96 seconds to 84, and then that would take you to 72. Antimatter 120 to 90 to 60, and then max speed from 24, 48, and 72, and then a bump up from 24 to 36 to 48 seconds. As a reminder, this is a significant max speed reduction. It only shoots in the straight direction off of your evacuator, so you have to turn in order to make it hit. And then it is an AoE application and prevents enemies from jumping out of the gravity wall. So is a good one to catch ships fleeing, prevent them from running away from you, but not as good as preventing you getting attacked, because your egg will have to fully turn around to fire it, and you are more or less sacrificing this ship to get other ships out if that becomes the problem. Subspace Rupture did get a nice buff in the last patch. I believe we've talked about it previously, where it had 0 pierce when you got it. Now it has 300 pierce. 300 pierce, and I'm just going to quickly look at my notes. 300 pierce, the only ship that you do not fully pierce on the Advent will be the Destra, which is their heavy cruiser. Every other subcap you get full damage against. With the tech, the only ship that you do not fully pierce is the Harka at 400 durability. Every other ship on the Javelin has 325. I'm not sure why it has the extra 25. but it would essentially take you from full damage down to, I think it's somewhere in the mid 80s or so. So it's still a significant damage. And then against the Mirror Vasari, the Oppressor has 420 penetrators at 330 and the Fabricators at 330. So for those ones that you do not do full damage to, you usually do right around 50% damage to all those subcaps. And then against capital ships, you will actually do 33% damage instead of, I believe it used to be 20 basically, because of the way that the durability works. So again, Subspace Rupture got a significant buff by getting this Pierce, and I think it was the right thing to do because Pierce is a commodity that's difficult to find anywhere, and Subspace Rupture essentially, if it had 100 durability, you were losing 50% of your damage, which I personally thought was kind of ridiculous. So this is a good thing for us to get. Otherwise, the rest of it is unchanged. Cooldown goes from 96, 84, 72. Antimatter 120, 90, and 60. And then duration 30, 36, 42. Damage rate stays the same from 12, 15, 18 without Gravity Warhead. And with Gravity Warhead, damage rate 24, 30, and 36 damage per second. Because of the damages now, I think all of the damage calcs that I had in the first video still apply. And so the total damage that I think I talk about at some point in the video is the same. I'm not going to go through the calculations because I don't have it ready currently, but it does exist, and because of the Pierce, for the most part, you're doing full damage to every subcap. Drain Planet, still the same. I think a little bit less impactful now just because 30 metal and crystal received per second used to be a big deal, but because of population, 30 the total gold or the total metal and crystal is not super significant anymore. So I think less overall for damage, and less the money received is kind of negligible. It's really just about damage at this point. And 30 planet bombing for 30 seconds is 900, and 900's fine, but even this planet has 2940 at level 3, which is next to nothing. So yeah, it's not super big. We've got other ships that are better for bombing than this one. So we'll talk about I've got two that are the same. I was gonna toy around with weapons and whatnot, going through ship items. So this is Exodus here. So we'll go through them. Consumable, the nano catalyzers, I think is an okay item early game. It is essentially 72 antimatter every 30 seconds. Now, this blue one at 250, you've got like a 1 antimatter regen per second. And if you're casting these two the one time for 240 antimatter, you've essentially completely negated every bit of antimatter on this ship. So I think having it as, even if you're using it as a support to give to other ships, you can even do it to an ally, you can do it to yourself. But I think having one of these on the ship early game is a good idea, but make sure you turn off auto cast. Otherwise, after you use your 2 damage ability, your Gravity Warhead and your Subspace Rupture, it will automatically auto cast on itself, and sometimes you might not want that. So just be aware as soon as it finishes building on your ship that you probably want to turn it off. Nano Repair Swarm, I still think that this is one of the best early game items on any Vasari ship. It significantly augments the healing on your ship. As you can see here, it's 12 armor, hull or armor regen per second for 36 seconds, which comes out to, and I'm just going to do a rough math, I think it's like 420 or so extra hull and or armor. Using it on the armor is obviously better. because we don't get regen on armor. Hull will regen already on its own, but armor is tougher. So I recommend having probably at least until you're mid tier 3 on military, that you should probably have a nano repair swarm on every capital ship in that point of the game. Nano attack swarm, I believe, has 1,000 pierce, but don't quote me on that. It can be sneaky, the amount of damage that it does do here, because as you can see, it's a 200 automatically, and then it does 600. Am I doing my math right? Yeah, 600 damage over 20 seconds. So you're doing 800 damage just by having this item on it, and it is single target, so it's probably something you want to cast on a capital ship, so that you can either negate some healing, so that you can pierce through, because maybe you've only got one capital ship or two capital ships, but it can be sneaky how much damage it does do. So having one of these early, maybe two early, so you can alternate between the two and never have one off, might not be a bad idea. So I think this is actually a pretty good item. But I'm not going to touch the consumables because I want to play around with the offensive items to see how much damage we can get this up to. And again, I'm going to leave these two here for reference with no items. But I'm going to grab a beam weapon and put it on the ship real quick and unpause it. And we go to 13.1. Is that what I was at before? No. So we go from 9.9 to 13.1, or you go from 22.4 to 29.6. And that's with the active off. I'm going to use it. So they both used it. This jumps up to 19.5. This goes to 44.1. So I think it's a pretty good buff. 44. Yeah, so you essentially double. So you're double damage now. And again, this is all of the researches. This is all the way up to tier 2 on the beam overrides. This is a tier 4 item. It does cost a red exotic. I think it's probably worth getting, because by the time you're in tier 4, you're probably not sitting on too many subcaps at that point. Either you've probably gone to here and you've filled up with oppressors, you filled up with can racks, you probably have a good mix of wardens and defensors. You have a fleet of raiders going somewhere to steal you some resources. You might even have some skirmishers left over to snipe carriers or something. But this turns this ship from a mediocre 9.9 DPS, which is basically 40 to 80 damage per second on beams to capital ships. So I think that's pretty solid. We do have the wave modulator. I think that back when I did these videos before the last patch, every one of these capital ships had waves on it, but the only one that was even worth contemplating on was the Cordal Devastator, simply because the lack of pierce on the wave weapons versus how much pierce you would need to actually do damage to subcaps. So again, because it bumped up from 120 to 200, 200 actually hits a fair number of subcaps on its own right now. I'm going to pull up my list again. So in the Advent, you can do full damage to Disciple, which is their light frigate, the Acolyte, which is their corvette, the Tempest, which is their missile boat, which I'm sure you're all aware of at this point. It gets to 50% on the Sentinel because the Sentinel's 300. It does full damage to Drone Host and Guardian, and the Siege Purge ships does full damage to the Subjugator, and then the Illuminator does 50%, and then Destra you'll do 33% with. So to bump from, let's see, we're at 9.9, beam weapon, why is the beam weapon higher? or not beams, I'm talking wave cannons. So wave cannons 14.8. We'll grab it on both of these so we can see it. This is the tier 2, so it's 48 damage and 24% reload. So instead of 14.8, you're at 24.3. It'll help you kill subcaps a lot quicker. This looks to be about a 70% bump, and yeah, looks like 60 to 70% bump on the wave cannons. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say the reason that you're going to have this ship in the late game is not going to be for killing subcaps. You're going to want beams to kill other capital ships, or you're going to want defenses to keep this ship alive, because this is the slowest capital ship that we have. It's at 600. So in the range of other capital ships, I'm on the wrong planet. There's only one other capital ship that goes 600, and I believe that's the Skirmisher, because I know that the Marauder is 720, I know the Cordal is 660, and I'm pretty sure that the Devastator is also 660. So I'm pretty sure it's just our Scarantra that also has a 600 speed. It might be 660, I can't remember off the top of my head. But I don't think the wave modulator is going to be one that we're going to want to pick up, because then it's in range of enemy ships that can usually kill us. Even if you pick it up in tier 2, because it does cost a Tauronite, you're essentially at a 33% of getting another Devastator, or 33% of the way getting to another Desolator. So I think the wave weapon buff was good. I still don't think that the wave modulator is worth getting specifically on the Evacuator. Other ships will analyze it as well and see where we end up with that. The phase attenuated shield did get a change, and it is now a shield regen in combat plus 60%, whereas before I think it was just a regular shield regeneration buff. And then the active action went, I think it was an increase in cooldown. I think it used to be either 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and now it's 4 minutes with a 60% duration, which blocks all phase missiles. So I think this one's still okay, but it's not 100% exactly what we want on this ship. The new one, the inertial anchor. So for this one, slows the movement of nearby enemy missiles and fighters. So what this will do is it gives anything that has point defense on your ships a chance to do more damage to missiles or strike craft. And you already probably are running the heavy fighter on most of your ships at this point. And those heavy fighters are quite tanky, as you can see here. This is a fully buffed one, 74, 39, 178. And here we've got 60, 30, 125. It does have a light beam. It does do 12 damage per second with 120 pierce. And once you've got it upgraded, as you can see, the beams now correctly upgrade, which they patched about a month and a half ago, up to 17. So it goes from 12 to 17, which is quite good. The fighters now intercept missiles or torpedoes. So I think that this was a good overall buff with the fighters. But back to the inertial anchor. If you lower enemy strike craft max speed and max acceleration, and missiles max speed and max acceleration, it gives you a significant advantage getting with the point defense, getting your fighters out there, because you are probably all fighters and not bombers. Bombers have the same problem as a lot of other point defense stuff, so you're probably not going bombers unless you're very early in clearing. You might grab bombers, but I still think fighters are still probably better. But I think the inertial anchor has a place on this ship. It will, because this ship is so slow, you have to get close enough to cast Subspace Rupture. You have to get close enough to cast Gravity Warhead. Using this, you actually might be in range to use this and keep some fighters, keep some missiles off of your own ship. So I think this one's possibly worth getting, at least on one, if not two, of your capital ships. And this ship and the Marauder are probably your best bets to do that. Scarantra is also a decent choice if you notice that it's getting focused by enemy fighters and yours aren't clearing it, but it's still a good one worth getting. The self-repairing armor is still as good as I said it was previously, so you would still want this to keep your ship alive. If you're taking a significant amount of damage, it does give you that armor regeneration in combat, which we don't have otherwise. And then the active action, where, as you can see here, it gives you 24% of your max armor points once every 4 minutes, which is quite good. Strikecraft armor. This one I talked about last time, that it is absolutely not something you would want to get. Since the change to Strikecraft by giving us the fighter, it might not actually be as big a deal for Strikecraft. So as you can see here, it gives you 60 armor, it gives you 60% armor regen in combat, and it gives you extra armor strength. So I think that this is actually something that would be worth getting on a Scarantra. I think this ship is the second most fighters that you get, because I don't think that the Devastator gets to 5, and I don't think that the Marauder gets to 5. I'm pretty sure that the Devastator, the Desolator, and the Marauder all max out at 3. So if you find yourself in a significantly fighter-heavy battle with a lot of enemy carriers, that one might be worth getting if your fighters are getting picked out of the sky. It's no longer useless because it used to just be on bombers. Now you can put it on your fighters. Now you can keep your fighters alive longer. The armor regeneration is a nice thing to have. So consider it, I guess, if the enemy's heavy into fighters. Otherwise, it's probably not something you're going to want to focus on. Gravity stabilizer might be what you kind of need on this ship if you're finding yourself getting caught a lot. I hope by the time you're in fights, you have at least one Marauder ready to go, or are close to getting the first one online, because you do want that extra move speed aura that it provides. And the problem is that ship is so fast by itself that it will outrun your ship. So you can get the gravity stabilizer if you think that the gravity stabilizer will help you speed up to keep up with your Marauder. But otherwise, I don't know if this is going to be worth it, because you're already so slow. I'm going to grab it real quick. So max speed, you go from 660 to 672. So you got, did I do that right? No, 600 to 672. So you got 72 extra move speed. 670 gets you still slower than a lot of other enemy capitals. It's definitely slower than all the other subcaps. But if you stack enough buffs, there's a chance that you can get high enough by doing it. Resonance amplifier, I still don't think that this is a worthwhile purchase unless you are planning on sitting in a gravity well for a while. They did buff the phase resonator, where the base, I believe, went from 60 seconds to 120 seconds. Don't correct me, or correct me if I'm wrong on that one. It might be wrong. So instead, it goes from 60 to 120, then 120 to 240, which is 4 minutes, and then 120 to 240. So you're at 6 minutes of duration on resonance. I personally don't think that 200% duration is very likely. I still don't think that the buffs are significant enough that you would want to focus on getting extra duration on your capital ship. It's better on your subcaps, I think, at least pound for pound on your subcaps than it is on your capital ship. So I actually would recommend still skipping this item. It's just not quite there. And maybe they'll do something where they'll give Exodus and Alliance each their own phase resonance, where one of them has a unique one instead, while they're still carbon copies of each other, because it's still mobility, still combat, and still utility. So not worthwhile. Antimatter recharger, I don't think is necessary. As you can see here, by the time you're getting into those top levels, you're going to be at 768 antimatter. You're going to regen 2.4 every second. Even if you're casting these two skills at, what did I say there? 72-second cooldown, 72-second cooldown. So these match in cooldowns. So every minute, every 72 seconds, you're going to be blowing 120 antimatter, and you're going to get back that exact same 120 antimatter immediately. So I don't think it's necessary, because you're not going to be casting Colonize in a combat. Drain Planet is not a... You're using it when it's safe to do so, and you're going to regen antimatter while you're using it. You're going to regen antimatter while you're moving to the next gravity well. I don't think that this is something that we need to worry ourselves about, just because you're not using antimatter at the speed that this would need to be replenishing it. It's only self, as you can see here. It's not an aura like the Advent one is. And I would rather save a blue exotic and use a nano catalyzer swarm instead. This one's on demand. This one gets you fast antimatter. This one, yeah, it'll bump you up from, what do we got here, 1.2 to 2.4, or in this case 2.4 to 4.8. But you're not, I mean, even if you're casting these two on cooldown, it's not going to make or break you. So I don't think that this is a necessary item. On Exodus, we have the Empire Research and Warfare Labs, the extra research rate, the mobile exotic refinery, the beacon, and the mobile phase capacitor. I don't have as much experience with Exodus. I think the mobile phase resonance capacitor, this might be a ship that's worth putting it on, because it's so slow. You're going to keep it in the back. You're going to keep it protected. I think you could maybe stick it on one of these ships. Same thing with the Warfare Lab and the Empire Lab. Because it's so slow, because it's in the back, even if you get into a bad fight, hopefully this isn't a ship that you're bringing that close to it, and it's hopefully the enemy's smart enough to not target it. This ship is probably one that you want to keep in the back anyway. So I would say infrastructure-wise is worth considering. And then we'll switch back to, switch back to blue. This is the Alliance player. As you can see here, it's all the same stuff. They just don't have the infrastructure. And then phase resonance, we briefly talked about it. 18% move speed. We already saw what 12% does. Move speed might actually be okay if you I've talked about this before. I think phase jump speed is garbage, because I also usually play Alliance, so I have friendly jump telemetry, which means that anytime I'm going to my own planet, I get 180% phase jump speed. I still think that there's no point in getting mobility unless you can get all the way up to tier 4 or tier 5 in one jump. I think phase jump speed is kind of a trash mobility stat. You're only keeping mobility if you've recently jumped into a well, and then you just get a small boost in phase jump speed when you're leaving. I don't think it's worthwhile. Max speed, however, is worth getting it. So only go for mobility if you think you can get up to tier 4 or tier 5 on mobility. Combat stats, I think everybody kind of wants combat stats anyway. It works on your subcaps, it works on your caps, and anything that gives you a bonus in damage, reload, bypass is just a small bump that you can get. So even if you're just getting small levels of it, I say grab it. And then utility, this is strictly for capital ships. because I don't think any of our other ships even have a antimatter ability on it. I think Severin might, and I think Canrack might now, because they gave it the charged missile. Yeah, they did. So those would be the only two that would benefit from cooldown or antimatter. Cooldown, so 36% would be good on the evacuator. As you can see here, once you're maxed out, am I in the wrong one? Yeah, I'm in the wrong one. So 72 seconds, do a quick 30, gets you 20 seconds off, gets you down to 50. So cooldown is your biggest thing that you're fighting with here. And then we've talked about minor factions before. There's a 20% cooldown in one of these. I didn't pick the right one. The gives you 20% bonus experience, gives you 20% or minus 20% cooldown. So that one I would actually recommend. Would be worth using just because you'll probably be casting Subspace Rupture a lot more frequently now. So I would say get cooldown if you can get it, if you can sneak it into your build somehow. Oh, and the one thing we didn't talk about is skill order. So obviously you start with 1 point in colonize. You can't fight that, and you want to colonize your fairest planet as quick as you can. So no fighting that. I don't think it's necessary to level this from 1 to 2 to 3. You can maybe get away with just putting it at 2 because you kind of want the 90-second cooldown. Because you can go from one asteroid to another in 2 minutes and clear it, and your cooldown may not be ready. So maybe getting to 2 just so you can go quicker would be worth doing it, but I don't know if it's necessary to go past 2 at any point. Otherwise, you definitely want as many levels as you can into both Subspace Rupture and Gravity Warhead, to the point where I would recommend actually skipping Drain Planet. So you start with 1 here. You definitely get their second point in Subspace Rupture. This will help you clear planets quicker if you don't have antimatter issues. But remember, 120 antimatter is quite significant early. And then you want level 3, you want at least 1 point in Gravity Warhead. I would maybe consider going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if you think you'll get to level 5 by the time you're fighting. Otherwise, if you're only going to be level 4 by the time you're fighting an enemy, you want to go 1, 2, 3, and then 4 back into Subspace Rupture. But I would argue, if you think you can go Subspace Rupture all the way and just have 1, 1, and then 3 at level 5, this is going to be your bread and butter. This now has so much subcap damage built into it that it didn't used to have, that it might actually be worth leveling Subspace Rupture now to fight little stuff. If you didn't go Defensor, this is what's going to actually help you clear maybe a tech that has gone heavy into Corvettes, or it'll help you clear enemy Disciples for Advent, or enemy Cobalts if there's a significant amount of Cobalts. Can actually help with Acolytes, Shurikens, Stillets, enemy Defensors, enemy Raiders, enemy Skirmishers, Canracks. It does everything now. So 1, 1, and 3 is probably how I would recommend going it up to level 5. And then other techs we'll talk about. The ship kill experience and planet bombing experience is good. I would say if you have spare resources in Tier 2, you want to get it just to help level up. If you do go to Tier 2 and get 2nd generation crews, you could even go ahead and grab a 2nd evacuator, get it out at level 2, and just completely skip colonize and just go back and forth between Gravity Warhead and Subspace Rupture. I think that is a valid build now, because colonize, again, I've kind of talked about it, it's not as good as it used to be. Let's see what else. Pairing it with ships, Defensors work really well with it because it will help with missile intercept, because you only have 2 points of intercept on this ship, And the way the intercept now works, because missiles have so much more HP, you're not going to be clearing the Javelin missiles in every gravity well when you get there. So the defensor actually is a good complement to the ship. It gives you the point defense you don't have. It'll help you with clearing enemy fighters. It'll help you with intercept if the enemy has used which one is it? Has used boarding crew on Javelins and will negate those. So I think this is a good one to help with clearing the air, clearing the missiles. Raiders, I think Raiders should be off doing their own thing and getting you resources. So this one's doing its own thing. Just ignore it for fleet comps. The Overseer is always going to be good. You still probably want 2 or 3 in any fleet, and to stagger the active skill on it, just to keep yourself taking less damage. Canrack is going to give you that heavy capital damage, so you do want a good smattering of them. Warden's going to do similar to what Defensor did, but it's going to also overload the air with its own missiles and then steal some of the enemy point defense away to deal with those. So Wardens are good, much slower than the Defensor. Defensors can chase. Wardens is when they can't chase, and because you're so slow, you actually probably want a little bit of both in your fleet. Send these on the back line, keep these on the front line, keep you safe. Skirmishers, I skipped over light skirmishers. You probably do. I mean, you start with the 3 that you get at the start of the game. They're the same as what they used to be. There's not too much there. You still probably want a couple more to help you clear a gravity well. But you've got a pretty decent clear now that the wave cannon got its slight tweaks and buffs. And then the Oppressor, I think, is still amazing. It's a better front line. It's got a really good damage effectiveness. By the time you're up in tier 3, you're thinking just putting as many of these out as you can. And your capitals are much less of your fleet composition, and your subcaps are a much higher level of composition. So always good to augment with these. And then as far as let's see, where is my builder? Let me put this here. Build it. It's not going to build it right away. Talk about capital ships. So as you can see, you start with your 2 exotics in every color. So the builds that you can do is you can go with a Cortal, which is I believe it's 2 reds and a white, which means that if you grab, and I'm going to wait for it to build. So it can show me. There it is. All right, so 2 reds and a white. And then you can get 1 white and 2 blues. So you can build these 2 together with just your starting exotics. If you get any extras, you can obviously do other stuff. You can do Desolator into Scarantra. You can do Desolator into, I believe, Marauder. You could also grab a second Evacuator, and then you have to go into Devastator and I think Scarantra. Nope. You can go egg into Cortal, so you can go double egg into Cortal, which depends on the enemy fleet. Everything has their place. I think I've said this in another video. I like getting the Marauder once I have the 2nd gen cruise, just because then you can get 1 level in phase out hull, 1 level in distort gravity. Phase out hull is always going to be good for channeling abilities, which still applies to the Radiance, still applies to the Progenitor, still applies to the Marza. All those fun channeling abilities that we have to deal with. Just to summarize, it's either 1, 2, or you can go 1, 2, or 1, 2, or 1 and 2, just with your starting exotics. I think it's actually a reasonable thing to go 2nd Evacuator early game, especially if you know that the enemy is tech, because they can probably go corvette heavy early game, like Stillets and Shurikens. So getting the AOE up, getting those corvettes out, I think is a good thing. Trying to think of any other things. Oh, we can talk order of research. Defensive as early as you can on this ship. It's not your biggest damage dealer. Whenever any of these damage or any of these tankiness, any survival items, we'll call it survival, and once any of these become available for research, I recommend getting them just to keep this ship alive longer, because it's so slow. It is very tanky. It is our tankiest capital ship, I believe, from a raw base stat standpoint. So I recommend getting anything in survival as soon as it becomes available. And then as far as damage, we already talked about it. You really don't have pulse weapons on this ship. It's all either beams or waves. And you don't have any missiles on it. So beams, I think, are decent for leveling up. You do have 4 of them. So you'll basically get 6. Let's see. So you get 0.7 per beam with 1 upgrade. So not horrible, but not great. And then the waves, again, you get 12. So you basically get another 1. It's small. We already talked about the increases and what max levels get you. So it's not much. And I would recommend, if you're thinking about just leveling your evacuator, skip them. You'll want to level the subcaps that you've got, or the other capitals that are better in your fleet. Service or turret servos are worth getting at any time, just because we need point defense. You buff your defensor, you buff your warden, and you buff the point defense on your capital ships, and then eventually your oppressors once you get there. And then the wave tracking speed and the wave range. If you've got a lot of oppressors, I would say get it. If you have a lot of devastators, I would say get it. Otherwise, I don't know if this is something you really need on this ship. And then I noticed, why isn't this on? I didn't talk about these weapon arcs. Close that. All right, so on your ship, you've got your beams. Beams are forward facing. As you can see here, they do have some significant overlap in the front. This ship will turn and face forward to do its damage. And then the wave is on the bottom. It has quite a arc around. It has quite an arc up. So this will turn and this will shoot its stuff as it's as your ship is moving, especially to the front and to the sides in the front. And then you've got your quad beams we already talked about. Your 2-point defenses are forward facing and side facing with very slight rear. So they won't really do anything for missiles chasing you on the backside. And I think that's it for the evacuator. Again, good buffs for subspace rupture. Nice minor buff to the medium wave cannon. Still not something that I'm going to be augmenting on my ships, but I would say you're probably looking like that. That's your build for late game. You just want to keep this ship alive. You're not super concerned about its DPS. You've got so many better ships for doing damage. This is probably the highest you could ever get it, I think. No, you can get it slightly higher with the beams. But this is not going to be your main DPS ship. It's going to be along for the ride. It's going to be probably in the back just casting subspace ruptures on clumped fleets and dealing with stuff that way. So thanks for everyone for watching this video. Hopefully I can keep working on the other ones, get some refreshes on a bunch of the ships that I've done, and add them again later. So thanks. Have a good one.